What is up, guys? It is the Bluebloods here, back with another Week 8 college football preview. We have the number 10 Oregon Ducks traveling to UCLA to take on the Bruins in one of the biggest Pac-12 matchups of the season. It's definitely the biggest this weekend. College game day will be in Pasadena for this huge matchup, and you got two teams really looking to take control of their respective divisions and really make a run at this Pac-12 title that is wide open this year with all the chaos that we have seen out west already. UCLA is actually a 2-point favorite over the Ducks right now, who are a top 10 team. This game will kick off 2:30 p.m. Central Time live on ABC. And you're looking at the Pac-12 race. The only team with an unblemished conference record is Utah right now going into week 8, and both of these teams have arguments sitting with one conference loss that this weekend could be of utmost importance in their Pac-12 championship, aspirations. But looking at some of the other storylines, the Ducks come into this matchup clinging onto their top 10 spot, coming off a huge win over Cal on a very sneaky trap game feel type of game on Friday night. Got out with a 7-point win, and they're looking for one of their biggest wins of the season over a UCLA team that was a top 15 team just a handful of weeks ago. And they're really looking to keep pace in a competitive Pac 12 North division as they are currently tied for the division lead with their state rivals, Oregon State. So this game is extremely important for the Ducks and Mario Cristobal. But the Bruins, they had one of the hottest starts in college football, found themselves making a run to the top 10 until they lost two out of the next three games. One of them to a Fresno State team that has been excellent, and they seem to have something missing. But then out of nowhere, two straight road conference wins has UCLA back on track, and they're looking to put some pressure on Utah in that division and possibly make their first Pac-12 championship appearance in multiple years now. And Chip Kelly is looking to prove that he's finally built a real Pac-12 contender down here in LA. But looking at the all-time series, UCLA leads this series 41-30 over the Ducks. This series goes back to 1928, so there's been a lot of games played in this series, but the Ducks are on a 2-game winning streak in this series and have won 8 of the last 9 games over the Bruins, with the Bruins' last win coming in Pasadena in 2017, and they're probably going to be looking to replicate that this weekend. But getting into the keys of the game, for the Ducks, it has to be this rushing attack. It led them to a huge upset win over Ohio State earlier this season. And when the running game is clicking, it just brings this offense to a whole nother level. And it allows Anthony Brown to really be comfortable, settle into the offense. And that's key for his rhythm and his play on the field, because when this offense becomes one-dimensional, it just does not move the ball very efficiently. So they have to help Anthony Brown at quarterback by establishing the rushing attack. And this rushing attack has been great this season. Over 210 yards per game. That's third in the Pac-12 right now. And they're averaging as a team over 5 yards per carry for this season. But the running back room took a huge hit when CJ Verdell sustained his season-ending injury against Stanford. But the Ducks have some young talent in that room that they're going to rely on to step up. And it all starts with Travis Dye, who was really the right-hand man for Verdell early this season. 527 rushing yards, almost 7 yards per carry, and 4 touchdowns. And behind him, Byron Cardwell and Trey Benson are some names to watch behind Dye as rotational pieces, as some depth pieces, as they try to work their way into this rotation. Now, Benson is just coming off an injury. Many expected him to step in last week, but they held him out at the last minute. But Cristobal said that he is ready to go and will be a significant part of this running back rotation this week. And on top of that, you also have the dynamic nature of Anthony Brown, who's rushed for over 240 on the ground and also has his own 5 rushing touchdowns, which right now leads the team for active players. And even though the rushing attack is a key factor for the Ducks, the play of Anthony Brown is going to be extremely important this weekend, because without Verdell now, he's had to take a larger role in leading this offense, both on the ground and through the air. And this will be a huge test to see how far he's developed in this program this weekend in LA. But you're looking at what he's done thus far. 59% completion percentage, over 1,200 passing yards, 8 touchdowns, only 1 pick, with over 240 rushing yards on the ground, like I said, and 5 touchdowns that I mentioned earlier. The number one thing for Brown this weekend, though, which he's done very well this year, is to avoid turnovers because this UCLA secondary is giving up almost 300 yards through the air. So Brown's going to have some opportunities to make some plays as long as he's efficient and can get some explosive plays going for this Oregon offense. The Ducks are going to have a great shot this weekend in winning this game. And it's weird to say because they're 10th in the nation, but pulling the upset since they're underdogs. But when you look at how Brown's made his living, it's on underneath throws and those intermediate routes. Zero to, at the line of scrimmage to about 19 yards down the field is where this offense really thrives. If that's clicking and the running game's going, this offense is very hard to stop because what all that encompasses is if the running game's going, if they're getting it done underneath, they're getting it done intermediate routes over the middle, it sets up those deep shots for these talented Oregon wide receivers and Brown to really try to go make something happen down the field. But looking at his passes at that intermediate to short yardage range, he's completing over 60% of them. Over 900 of his yards come from those passes, 4 touchdowns and a pick, and it's accounted for 45 first downs for this offense. So that shows you how important it is for Brown and this offense to get things going underneath and over the middle against this UCLA secondary. So those are the keys for this Oregon offense. Now, for UCLA, kind of moving on here, it's been the same all season. If you've watched a single UCLA game, you know what's the key. And I hate repeating keys in the episode, but running the football is of the utmost importance in this game. Whichever team establishes their running game is probably going to come away with a big win this weekend. Now, the Bruins have the second ranked rushing attack in yardage per game in the Pac-12 with almost 220 on the ground, but they lead the Pac-12 with yards for the entire season with over 1,500 since they, have played 7 games and some of the other teams have only played 6. Oregon State is leading in yards per game, but UCLA has been just dominant. You look at what they've done with the rushing attack. That was the key in how they got to the top 15. They ran past Hawaii. They ran past LSU. And then you look at what they have to do this weekend, you have to run the ball against this Oregon defense. That's something that Oregon did really well against Ohio State, limiting at times. So the Bruins have to establish that and take some pressure off of Dorian Thompson-Robinson through the air. This Oregon defense is only allowing 130 yards on the ground per game and less than 4 yards per carry. So it's not going to be an easy task. But when you look at what Zach Charbonnet's done this year, man, over almost 700 yards rushing, 6.5 yards per carry, and 7 times he found the end zone, including that huge 3-touchdown performance week 1 against Hawaii. And then you look at their just workhorse and Brenton Brown with almost 500 yards rushing, 6.5 yards per carry as well, and 4 rushing touchdowns. These guys are the best running back, maybe not the best, because Ohio State has got some dogs, but they're one of the best running back duos this Oregon team is going to see all season. Charbonnet has reinvented his career out here in this Chip Kelly offense, and Brenton Brown has really established himself as a true, probably top 3 or 4 running back in the Pac-12 right now. And then you also have the threat of Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who's put up 300 on the ground and 5 rushing touchdowns. So they got a 3-headed monster as well. And so this is going to be the key for UCLA. And when you look at how they do it, they're one of the few rushing attacks that really establish themselves up the middle. The A gaps are where they excel. Over 7 yards per carry when attacking the A gaps of a defense. And that includes over 20 first down runs and 20 runs over 10 or more yards down the field. They are explosive up the middle. They win the line of scrimmage week in and week out. And when this offense is clicking, that's where they're going to make their living. And on the, in the backfield too, let's give some praise to Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who's played some of his best football this season, just quietly under the radar. He's really continued his improvement that we saw late last season when UCLA really made a run in the Pac-12, almost beat USC. He's continued that momentum, even though there's been some rough patches in certain halves and the Hawaii game wasn't great. down the stretch, he's played really well. He's completing over 60% of his passes for over 1,400 yards, averaging over 9 yards per attempt, 13 touchdowns, and only two turnovers, which is great, along with those five rushing touchdowns I just mentioned. He's on pace right now to have a career high in passing yards and touchdowns, while also right now being on pace to possibly throw the least amount of interceptions he has in any season of his career. Dorian Thompson Robinson is playing at a very, very high level right now and will be another key for UCLA because he has to be a playmaker. We know Anthony Brown's going to go out there and make plays like we've seen him do week in and week out. Thompson has to have one of his best games of the season this weekend if UCLA is really going to pull the upset over the Ducks. Now, when kind of looking at some of the advanced analytics like we did with Brown, Thompson Robinson's short game is where he lives at 0 to 9 yard range. He's completed over 81% of his passes underneath for five touchdowns. And that's accounted for almost 40% of his dropbacks this season. So you have to give credit not only for him being accurate underneath, he's putting the ball in a position where his wide receivers, his running backs can go make plays in open space against some of the other defensive athletes that they've faced. And you got to give them credit. They've went and made plays. And some guys to watch on the outside, Kyle Phillips, Greg Dulich, these guys have been spectacular for the Bruins as pass catchers, and they've turned multiple potential small gains into explosive plays for the Bruins, and they can make plays in one-on-one coverage if they get the opportunity. You got Phillips over 369 through the air, over 15 yards per catch and six touchdowns, while Dulich has 374, over 17 yards per catch and three touchdowns. These guys are going to have to play big this weekend. They got one of their toughest matchups that they have seen with this Oregon secondary led by Michael Wright. And also that this secondary under Mario Cristobal, what he's brought at Oregon, has been the bright spot for Oregon for 2-3 years now. They like to play physical. They trust their guys in one-on-one coverage. So Phillips and Dulich have to go make plays. And that's the key for UCLA this weekend. Now for the matchup. It has to be this Oregon D line against UCLA's offensive line. And the reason is UCLA's offensive line not only has to be tasked with winning the line of scrimmage with the rushing attack, but they also have to protect Dorian Thompson Robinson, who hasn't been great under pressure. His passing grade, according to Pro Football Focus, drops almost 20-30 points when he's under pressure. They have to keep him clean in the pocket and can't have him running for his life all game. And this is by far one of the best defensive lines that UCLA has seen all season. And when you look at the offensive line for UCLA, they've played really well, but there's been a problem. The rotating door at that center right guard spot due to injuries and inconsistent play has been a problem. They've moved John Gaines II back to his natural right guard spot, and Duke Clemens is probably going to make his third straight start at center this weekend since Sam Marazio's return was very short-lived when he tried to come back. But the bright spot is the tackle spot, which is so important against this Oregon defense led by Kayvon Thibodeau. Alec Anderson and Sean Ryan have been two of the biggest and most consistent pieces on this offensive line. Only one combined sack allowed, 4 quarterback hits, and 14 combined pressures between these two guys. UCLA controls the edge very well in pass blocking situations, which is going to bode well against an Oregon team that is very strong on the outside of their defense. Now, that right guard center spot I mentioned, Gaines and Clemens have been two of the lowest graded O linemen on this team. They're going to have to play much better this weekend because you cannot allow Oregon to get pressure up the middle. And we already know that this Mario Cristobal Oregon team is not afraid to bring pressure up the middle with the linebackers who are just absolutely athletic and can make plays all game long. So you have to be ready for the blitz and you have to be ready for pressure. So got to communicate and you've got to know what you're doing and you have to execute this weekend. Now, they've only allowed 2 sacks combined, but over 20 pressures allowed between these two guys this season, which means this is going to be a huge test for them to step up. But overall, as the offensive line, you saw what they could do in the run blocking. Everybody's stout in run blocking. You don't have the number 2 rushing attack in the Pac-12 without having that. And they've only allowed 4 total sacks this season and under 50 pressures in only 7 games. This offensive line has been the strength of UCLA this year, and Chip Kelly has utilized it as much as he possibly can by running the football and letting Robinson build off of that and be protected in the pocket. This is going to be a huge test for them. But this offensive line is no slouch and probably one of the better offensive lines Oregon has seen this year. But when you look at the defensive line, we know the superstar. Kayvon Thibodeau, 10 QB hurries this year, has a 91.6 pass rush grade by Pro Football Focus, one of the highest in the country. This unit has 13 sacks, almost 100 quarterback hurries this season, and has held opponents to under 4 yards per carry, like I said earlier. So it's led by Thibodeau, of course, but Dorlist with 2 sacks and 20 quarterback hurries off the other edge is someone to watch as well. And then Popo Amuve at nose tackle. He doesn't have any sacks, but in terms of the running defenses, that's where he comes into play. Over 20 tackles from the nose guard spot, and he is going to have to be stout in run defense, especially with how much UCLA likes to run up the middle. If Amuve can play his best game of the season this weekend, it's going to go a long way in establishing, and really establishing what Oregon wants to do on the defensive side of the ball and lead them to the win. So that's kind of the matchup breakdown there. But for a prediction, this one was very hard for me to predict because I see why UCLA might be the favorite because they've been really hot. Oregon's coming off a loss in a very close game to Cal on a Friday. And what I've seen from this Oregon defense and what I've seen from Anthony Brown in the biggest moments, I trust Mario Cristobal and this Oregon team to come up with something and make a play late to win this game. I think it's going to be an extremely close game. The team who rushes the ball better and quarterback doesn't make mistake is probably going to win the game. I have the Ducks in an extremely, extremely close matchup, 27-24 over the Bruins in Pasadena this weekend. So a 3-point win for the Ducks. So that is my prediction here, guys. Go ahead and comment your scores below. Let me know who you think is going to win, by how much, and what your thoughts are on this extremely important Pac-12 matchup. And also, if you're new, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and go ahead and like the video and share it if you may, man. I appreciate y'all's support so much. But we'll be back tomorrow with another Week 8 college football preview, and make sure to tune in tonight, 6:30 p.m. Central Time, for our Week 8 college football mailbag. We're talking all the biggest storylines, questions from you guys, the subscribers, and everything like that. So make sure to tune in tonight, 6:30 p.m. Central, for that. But until tomorrow, guys, and until tonight, the Blue Bloods are out.